I stand in the barn, knees pressed against cold concrete, hands trembling as I hold 247 letters. Every envelope bears the same careful cursive. Wren Ashford. My name, written by someone who never knew my face. Every single one stamped, "Return to sender, address unknown," in angry red ink. The papers smell like lavender and thyme. Like a grandmother I never met spent 2 decades searching for a granddaughter who didn't know she existed. 3 days ago, I owned nothing but $83 in a canvas bag stuffed with second-hand clothes. 3 days ago, I believed the same lie I'd carried for 19 years, that I was unwanted, unloved, and completely alone in this world. I was wrong. But before I tell you about these letters, before I explain how they shattered everything I thought I knew about my life, I need to tell you about the machine that changed everything. The one I found yesterday, hidden under a tarp in this very barn. The one that led me here, to this moment, surrounded by proof that someone loved me all along. My story begins on a Tuesday morning in Billings, Montana, when I walked out of the only home I'd ever known with nowhere to go. The Montana Children's Home smelled like industrial cleaner and broken promises. I stepped through the front doors at 8 in the morning, my entire life compressed into one canvas bag slung over my shoulder. Mrs. Patterson sat at the reception desk, her eyes fixed on her computer screen as I signed the final release form. 19 years under that roof, and she couldn't spare 5 seconds to say goodbye. Her pen scratched across the paper where she countersigned. The sound felt like an ending. I stood on the sidewalk, watching morning traffic crawl past, trying to figure out where unwanted girls go when the system finally spits them out. The group home had taught me survival skills, how to stretch ramen noodles across 3 meals, how to sleep through anything, how to make myself invisible when the world got too loud. What they never taught me was what comes after, what you're supposed to do when you're finally free, but have nowhere to go. The April air bit through my thin jacket. I'd turned 22 exactly 28 days ago. No cake, no candles. Just another Tuesday that felt like every other day in a long string of days that all blurred together. I started walking toward the bus station, each step taking me away from the only structure I'd ever known, toward nothing at all. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Bill collectors had been hounding me about the $47 I owed for community college textbooks I'd bought last semester before I had to drop out. But something made me swipe green. The voice on the other end belonged to a man who introduced himself as Richard Caldwell, attorney at law, calling from Whitefish, Montana. His tone was careful, professional, like he'd made this kind of call before and knew it required delicacy. He asked if I was Wren Marie Ashford, born April 3rd, 2003. Mother Catherine Ashford, father David Ashford. My throat went dry. Nobody had spoken my parents' names to me in 15 years. The social workers had been very clear after the accident. No living relatives, no family willing to take me in, no one who wanted the burden of a 3-year-old orphan. That's why I'd spent 19 years in the system. Mr. Caldwell cleared his throat, papers rustling in the background. He had news regarding an inheritance. My grandmother, Dorothy Marie Ashford, had passed away 3 months prior. She'd left me property, a farmhouse on 180 acres outside Whitefish, along with $31,500 in a savings account. I stopped walking. A man in a business suit nearly collided with me, muttered something sharp, kept moving. The sidewalk seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I told Mr. Caldwell there must be some mistake. I didn't have a grandmother. The social workers had been very clear about that, too. The lawyer's voice softened in a way that made my chest tighten, He understood this must come as a shock, but the will was legitimate, witnessed, and notarized. Mrs. Ashford had been very specific in her instructions. Everything she owned now belonged to me. I asked him why. Why would a grandmother I never knew suddenly leave me everything? Why had she never come for me? Mr. Caldwell went quiet for a moment. Then he said something that made tears prick my eyes for the first time in years. Your grandmother tried, Miss Ashford. For 18 years, she tried. But sometimes protecting someone means staying away. The bus ride from Billings to Whitefish took 6 hours. I watched Montana slide past the window, endless sky pressing down on brown fields, mountains rising in the distance like broken teeth. The woman next to me slept the entire way, her head bobbing against the window with each bump in the road. I kept checking my bank account on my phone, convinced the $31,000 would vanish before I could reach it. But the number stayed solid, real, impossible. More money than I'd ever imagined having. Enough to start over. Enough to stop running. Whitefish appeared just after sunset, a small town pressed against the edge of Glacier National Park. Population 1,100, according to the faded welcome sign. Main Street stretched 3 blocks. A diner called Margot's Place, Thornton Hardware Store, Red Barn Market, a gas station with pumps that looked older than me. The kind of town where everyone knew everyone, where strangers stood out like blood on snow. I found Mr. Caldwell's office above the hardware store, climbed narrow stairs that creaked under my weight. He was waiting. A thin man in his 60s with silver hair and kind eyes that looked too sad for someone delivering good news. He had papers spread across his desk, deed transfers, bank documents, death certificates. He explained the inheritance in careful detail. The farmhouse sat 4 miles outside town, accessible by a gravel road that turned to mud every spring. 180 acres, mostly pasture and forest. The house itself was old, built in 1943, white clapboard with a green metal roof. Behind it stood a barn, painted red decades ago, but now weathered to rust and gray. Mrs. Ashford had lived there alone for the past 18 years. Kept to herself mostly. Came into town once a week for groceries and supplies. She died in her sleep 3 months ago. Heart failure, the doctor said. Peaceful. The lawyer had been searching for relatives ever since. It took time to track me down through sealed adoption records and privacy walls. But Dorothy had left very specific instructions about where to look. I asked him how he found me. The children's home had strict privacy policies. Mr. Caldwell's expression shifted, something careful moving behind his eyes. Your grandmother left very specific instructions. She knew exactly where you were, Miss Ashford. She just couldn't reach you. He slid a key across the desk, brass and heavy, attached to a wooden tag with an address burned into the surface. Then he asked if I had any questions. Just one. Why didn't she come for me? The lawyer stood, walked to his window overlooking Main Street. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he turned back to me. Your grandmother believed she was protecting you from something. I don't know what, but everything she did out of love. I took the key and left before the tears could start. The farmhouse looked exactly like Mr. Caldwell described. White paint peeling in long strips, green roof spotted with rust, windows dark and watching. I pulled my borrowed rental car into the driveway just as the last light bled from the sky. The barn loomed behind the house, twice as tall, twice as dark, holding secrets I couldn't yet see. I sat in the car for a long time, engine ticking as it cooled, studying the house where my grandmother had lived and died without me. A motion sensor light flickered on above the porch, casting harsh shadows across the front door. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked twice and went silent. The key turned easily in the lock. The door swung open on hinges that didn't squeak. Recently oiled. Maintained. Even though no one lived here anymore. I found the light switch, flooded the front room with yellow light that made everything look older than it was. The house smelled like lavender and dust. Furniture covered in white sheets filled the living room like sleeping ghosts. I pulled the sheet off the nearest chair and found faded floral fabric, worn armrests, a knitted afghan folded across the back. Everything spoke of someone who'd lived here carefully, quietly, waiting for something that never came. I moved through the room slowly, running my fingers along walls and door frames, trying to feel some connection to the woman who'd left me this place. The kitchen held dishes in the cupboard, canned goods in the pantry, a calendar still turned to February with nothing marked beyond the 17th, the day she died. Upstairs, I found 2 bedrooms. The first was clearly hers. A double bed with a patchwork quilt, nightstand holding a lamp and reading glasses, closet full of practical clothes in muted colors. Nothing remarkable, nothing that told me who she'd been. The second bedroom made my breath catch. It was decorated for a child. A twin bed with a purple comforter. A bookshelf lined with children's books, spines uncracked, pages unstained. A dresser with drawers that opened to reveal girls' clothes in sizes ranging from toddler to teen, all with tags still attached. She'd been buying them for years, preparing for a granddaughter who never came. I sat on the bed and finally let myself cry. Not the quiet tears I'd learned in the group home, where weakness drew predators. Real crying. The kind that shakes your whole body and leaves you empty. I cried for the grandmother I never knew. For the childhood I never had. For all the years we'd lost. I cried until I couldn't anymore. Until exhaustion pulled me under into dreamless sleep. Morning arrived, cold and bright. Frost covering the fields in white that burned off as the sun climbed. I woke on the purple bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, my canvas bag unopened on the floor. My phone showed 6 missed calls from the children's home. Mrs. Patterson wanting to know where I'd left the room key. I deleted the voicemails without listening. The barn called to me. I could see it from the kitchen window as I made coffee in a pot that still held grounds from my grandmother's last cup. The building leaned slightly to the left, boards weathered silver gray, roof sagging in the middle like a tired spine. The doors stood closed, held shut by a chain and padlock that looked newer than everything else. I found the barn key on a hook by the back door, attached to a ring with a dozen others. The padlock opened with a solid click. The chain slithered through the door handles, and I pulled one side open wide enough to slip through. Darkness swallowed me whole. The air inside tasted like old hay and machine oil, thick enough to chew. I fumbled for my phone, used the flashlight to sweep across the interior. Dust motes danced in the beam, disturbed for the first time in months. And there, dominating the center of the barn like some mechanical dinosaur, stood the most enormous machine I'd ever seen. It took me a moment to recognize it as a tractor, but not like any tractor I'd seen in photographs or driving past farms. This thing was ancient, massive, built from riveted metal plates and iron wheels taller than my head. A smokestack rose from its back, the metal blackened by decades of heat and rust. Every surface showed age. Paint flaked away to bare steel. Bolts crusted with corrosion. Rubber gaskets cracked and crumbling. A tarp covered most of it, brown canvas thick with dust. I grabbed one corner and pulled. The fabric slid away, raising clouds that made me cough and cover my mouth. More of the machine revealed itself. A boiler door on the front, control levers stiff with disuse, a seat made of cast iron that looked about as comfortable as sitting on a park bench. I circled it slowly, running my hand along the cold metal. Someone had loved this machine once, cared for it enough to store it carefully when its working days ended. But why? What was so important about a rusted tractor that my grandmother kept it locked away in this barn? Then I saw the nameplate riveted to the side, brass gone green with age but still readable. Titan, 1918. 1918. This thing was over 100 years old. I pulled out my phone and searched. The results came back immediately. The Titan was one of the first steam-powered tractors ever built, manufactured for maybe 2 years before the company went bankrupt. Only a handful still existed, most of them in museums. This one should have been worth serious money to collectors. So why was it hidden in a barn in rural Montana? I found the newspaper on a workbench near the back wall. The Flathead Valley Chronicle, dated August 15th of last year. Someone had circled an advertisement in red pen. Estate auction. Farm equipment and antiques. Property of Harold Everton Estate. Saturday, August 17th. My grandmother's handwriting covered the margin in neat script. Lot 47. No one bid. Sold for $1. Check the seat. Check the seat. I turned back to the machine, studying it with new intensity. The seat was a simple metal platform, hinged like a chest lid. I grabbed the edge with both hands and pulled. The hinges screamed. The seat swung open, revealing a hollow space beneath. My flashlight caught on something that didn't belong. A brass key, heavy and old-fashioned, attached to a wooden tag with words burned into the surface. Storage Unit 17. And beside it, wrapped in cloth that crumbled at my touch, a brick-shaped bundle. My hands shook as I unwrapped the fabric. It fell away in pieces, revealing a bar of metal that caught the light and threw it back, golden and pure. A stamp on the surface showed a crown above a 5-pointed star. Numbers beneath. 1919. Gold. Real gold. The kind governments moved, not individuals. I set it on the ground and reached back into the seat compartment. More bundles. I pulled them out one by one, unwrapping each with growing disbelief. 7 bars total, each bearing the same crown and star, the same year. The weight was incredible. I could barely lift them all together. My phone rang, shattering the silence. I jumped, nearly dropped the gold bar I was holding. Unknown number again. I answered with my heart pounding. The voice was male, smooth, cultured, professional in a way that felt rehearsed. Miss Ashford, I presume. I'm Marcus Blackwell. I represent certain interests regarding this property and its contents. My throat tightened. I glanced at the barn doors, suddenly aware of how isolated I was. What interests? The antique tractor in your barn was sold under questionable circumstances last summer. My clients have historical claims to it. We're prepared to offer you $75,000, cash, today. $75,000 for a rusted tractor, which meant he knew or suspected what was hidden inside it. It's not for sale. His tone hardened, the professional veneer cracking. Miss Ashford, I don't think you understand your position. My clients have documentation proving ownership. If you refuse to cooperate, we'll pursue legal remedies, which would be unfortunate for someone in your circumstances. I looked at the gold bar scattered around me, at the key to a storage unit I hadn't visited yet, at the shadows filling the barn. My circumstances. He meant poor, alone, with no one to help me fight. I'm not selling. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I gathered the gold bars, wrapped them back in their cloth, and carried them to the house. Whatever my grandmother had found, whatever she'd left for me, it was bigger than an old tractor, and someone wanted it badly enough to threaten me within 24 hours of my arrival. I locked every door and window in the house. Then I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the brass key, wondering what else my grandmother had hidden in storage unit 17. Headlights swept across the kitchen window 20 minutes later. A car coming up the driveway, moving slowly, tires crunching on gravel. I stood, pulse jumping, and moved to the window. A black Mercedes sedan, new and expensive, completely out of place on a rural Montana farm. It stopped near the porch, engine running for a moment before shutting off. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. He was in his 50s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than everything I owned. Dark hair going silver at the temples. Face tanned like he spent winters somewhere warm. He looked up at the house, studying it with cold calculation, then started toward the porch. I opened the door before he could knock. We stood there staring at each other across the threshold. Miss Ashford, I'm Marcus Blackwell. We spoke on the phone. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I kept my hand on the doorframe, ready to slam it shut. I told you I'm not selling. He glanced past me into the house, like he was cataloging what he could see. $75,000 is a generous offer for farm equipment. I'd hate for you to make a decision you'll regret. The threat was barely veiled. I felt my anger rising, burning away the fear. This man had called me within hours of my arrival. He'd been watching, waiting. Maybe he'd been watching my grandmother, too. Get off my property. He took a step back, hands raised in mock surrender. Of course, I understand you need time to think. You have 48 hours, Miss Ashford. After that, things become more complicated. He turned to leave, then paused, looking back over his shoulder. His expression changed, something calculating, sliding into place. Oh, and Miss Ashford, your parents refused to cooperate with me once too. The words hit like a physical blow. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself. You knew my parents? His smile was cold, triumphant. He'd gotten the reaction he wanted. Of course, Catherine and David were very stubborn people. It's a shame what happened to them. He walked back to his Mercedes, climbed in, and drove away into the darkness. I stood in the doorway, frozen, as his taillights disappeared down the long driveway. The social workers had told me my parents died in a car accident when I was 3 years old. Ice on the highway. Tragic but unavoidable. I'd accepted that story for 19 years, never questioning it because I had no reason to doubt. But Marcus Blackwell's words carried a different weight. It's a shame what happened to them. Not it was a tragedy, or I'm sorry for your loss. A shame. Like he'd been there. Like he knew something about their deaths that I didn't. I closed the door and locked it. Then I went upstairs to the purple bedroom, pulled out my phone, and started searching for answers I should have looked for years ago. The accident report was public record. I found it on the Montana Highway Patrol database after 20 minutes of digging. Catherine and David Ashford, killed December 14, 2007, when their vehicle left Route 93 and plunged into a ravine. Single car accident, no witnesses. Icy conditions cited as the cause. I stared at the date. December 14th. I'd been 4.5 years old, not 3 like I'd always believed. Small discrepancy, but it bothered me. What else had the social workers gotten wrong? I searched for weather data from that night. It took longer, required accessing archived meteorological reports, but I found it. December 14th, 2007. Temperature, 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Clear skies, dry roads, no ice. The official report said icy conditions, but there was no ice. My hands started shaking. I set the phone down, stood up, walked to the window. The barn stood dark against the night sky, holding its secrets. 7 gold bars. A key to a storage unit. A grandmother who'd tried to find me for 18 years. Parents who died under suspicious circumstances. And a man who knew them, who wanted what they'd found, who'd threatened me the moment I showed up. Sleep wouldn't come. I lay in the purple bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through connections I didn't fully understand. Marcus Blackwell knew my parents. He wanted the tractor. He'd made his move the moment my grandmother died and I inherited the property. That meant he'd been watching, waiting for his chance. But what was he after? 7 gold bars were worth maybe $100,000, possibly more depending on the market. Valuable, but not worth the risk of threatening someone, of leaving a paper trail. There had to be more. The storage unit. That's where the answers were. I sat up, grabbed a brass key from the nightstand. Storage Unit 17. My grandmother had hidden something there, something important enough to leave me a trail of breadcrumbs to follow. Dawn broke cold and clear. I dressed quickly, grabbed the key, and headed into town. Whitefish was just waking up, lights coming on in the diner, a truck pulling into the gas station, someone sweeping the sidewalk in front of the hardware store. Small-town America, the kind of place that looked peaceful and safe, but I was learning that appearances could be deceiving. The storage facility sat at the edge of town, rows of metal buildings painted beige and surrounded by chain-link fence. The gate was open. I drove through, following the numbers until I found Unit 17. The key fit perfectly. I rolled the door up, metal screeching, and stepped inside. My grandmother had left me a library. File cabinets lined the walls, boxes stacked 3 deep, papers, photographs, documents organized with meticulous care. I pulled out the first folder and opened it. Newspaper clippings from 1918 and 1919. Articles about World War I ending, about reconstruction efforts, about gold shipments sent to Europe to help rebuild. My grandmother had highlighted passages, made notes in the margins, drawn connections I couldn't yet see. I opened another file. Letters. Correspondence between someone named Harold Everton and government officials, discussing shipments in vague language, except for one, dated March 1919. The merchandise you requested has been secured. Will hold as agreed. Payment received and appreciated. Harold Everton. The estate auction where my grandmother bought the tractor for $1. The same family name. My hands trembled as I kept reading. A third file held investigation notes, my grandmother's own work, typed reports, handwritten observations, photographs of people I didn't recognize, bank records showing payments to state police officers around the time of my parents' accident, property deeds revealing that Blackwell Industries had purchased the old Everton factory land and sold it to the state at triple the price, and photographs, dozens of them. Marcus Blackwell meeting with state senators, judges, police chiefs. Always the same calm smile, the same cold eyes. My grandmother had been building a case. For years, maybe decades, she'd been gathering evidence against the Blackwell family. And now I understood why she'd never come for me, why she'd left me hidden in the system. She was protecting me from them. At the bottom of the last file cabinet, sealed in plastic, I found a cassette tape. No label, just a date written in marker. December 9th, 2007. 5 days before my parents died. I needed a cassette player. The tape sat in my palm, light as a secret, heavy as the truth it might contain. December 9th, 2007. 5 days before my parents drove off Route 93 into a ravine that supposedly had ice on the road. 5 days before I became an orphan. Nobody used cassettes anymore. I drove back into Whitefish, the storage unit key burning in my pocket alongside the weight of everything I'd found. The hardware store seemed like the best bet. Small towns kept old things, held on to the past longer than cities did. A bell chimed as I pushed through the door. The interior smelled like sawdust and metal, aisles crammed with tools and supplies. An older man emerged from the back, maybe late 60s, with oil-stained hands and sharp eyes that assessed me in one glance. "You're Dorothy's granddaughter." His voice carried certainty, not question. I nodded, surprised. "How did you know?" "This is Whitefish, miss. Everyone knows everything by sunset." "I'm Silas Fletcher. Owned this place 40 years. Did some work for your grandmother over the years." He paused, something like grief crossing his face. "She was a good woman. I'm sorry for your loss." The kindness in his words made my throat tight. I held up the cassette tape. "I need something to play this." "Do you have an old tape player?" Silas studied the tape, then my face, reading the story there with the wisdom of someone who'd lived long enough to recognize desperation. "Follow me." He led me through narrow aisles to a back office crammed with electronics in various states of repair. Pulled a cassette player from a shelf, plugged it in, pressed a button. The mechanism clicked, whirred to life. "Works perfect. Had a lady trade it for store credit last month." He handed it to me, then stopped. "That date on the tape. That's 5 days before your parents died, isn't it?" I stared at him. "You knew them?" "Everyone in this county knew about Catherine and David Ashford. Your mother grew up here. Smart as a whip, wanted to be a lawyer. Met your father at some protest rally in Missoula. He moved back here with her after they married. They were good people. The kind who asked hard questions." "What kind of questions?" "The kind that get people killed, even when everyone pretends it was an accident." My hands tightened around the tape player. Silas looked at me for a long moment, then gestured to a chair. "Play it here if you want. Privacy. I'll watch the front." I sat, inserted the tape, pressed play. Static hissed. Then my father's voice, young and alive and real. "Are you sure about this?" My mother, steadier than him. "We have copies of everything. Manifest, letters, payment records. We can prove Everton stole the gold, and his family's been covering it up for 80 years. My father, worried. "But if we go to the wrong people?" "We won't. I've been careful. Tomorrow we drive to Helena and hand everything to the FBI. They'll investigate once they see what we have." A long pause, papers rustling. My father again, voice tight. "I keep thinking about that journalist in '98, the highway contracts case. They said suicide, but it wasn't suicide." My mother, firm. "That's why we're doing this. Because people who expose corruption get murdered and everyone looks the other way. Because 23 people died of cancer near that factory and the state called it coincidence. Because your grandfather stole government gold during Reconstruction and his descendants have been profiting for a century while poisoning people." More rustling. Then my mother's voice, softer, breaking. "Promise me something. If anything happens to us, make sure Wren gets somewhere safe, somewhere they can't find her. Your mother won't be enough. We're too connected to her. It needs to be unexpected. Someone who can hide her where no one will look." My father. Nothing's going to happen. Promise me, David. Silence stretched. Then my father, thick with emotion. I promise. The tape ended in static. I sat frozen, tears streaming down my face. They'd known. They'd recorded this 5 days before they died, because they knew the risk. They'd made plans for me, tried to protect me. And someone, Marcus Blackwell probably, had killed them before they could reach Helena, before they could hand their evidence to the FBI. Silas appeared in the doorway. I didn't look up, couldn't speak. He walked over, put a hand on my shoulder. Your grandmother came to me 3 months before she died, asked me to watch out for you if you ever showed up, said you deserved to know the truth, said someone had to finish what your parents started. I wiped my eyes, looked at him. Did she tell you what they found? Just that it was big. Government corruption going back 100 years. Your mother's grandfather, Harold Everton, was involved in something during World War I. Stole gold meant for European reconstruction, built his fortune on it. When people started asking questions, they died. Factory fire destroyed the evidence. Anyone who got close ended up in a car accident or a suicide that wasn't suicide, including my parents, including your parents. Silas moved to the window, looked out at Main Street. Your grandmother spent 18 years trying to prove it, gathering documents, following money trails, connecting dots. She told me once that she'd left you everything you needed to finish it, but that doing so would make you a target. I already am a target. Marcus Blackwell came to my house last night, offered me $75,000 for the tractor. When I refused, he threatened me. Silas turned back, jaw tight. That's Everton's grandson. Well, great-great-grandson. Family changed the name to Blackwell 2 generations back, tried to distance themselves from Harold. But they're still living off stolen money, still covering up murders. I stood, ejected the tape, held it carefully. I need to find the rest of what my grandmother left. There's a storage unit full of documents, and she hid gold in the tractor. 7 bars with 1819 stamped on them. 7. Silas shook his head. According to the old stories, 17 bars went missing from that shipment. If you found 7, there's 10 more somewhere. Worth over $2 million at today's prices. 2 million reasons for Marcus Blackwell to kill again. The thought settled in my stomach like ice. I need help. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who to trust. You trust Sheriff Reynolds. Tom's been suspicious about your parents' accident for years. Tried to push for investigation. Got shut down from above. And you trust Margot Hayes, runs the diner on Main. She was your grandmother's best friend. Knew your mother growing up. Silas paused. And you can trust my son, Callum. He's good with his hands, good at watching backs. Your grandmother asked him to keep an eye on the property after she passed. So there were people here. People who'd known my family, who'd been waiting. My grandmother had built a network of allies before she died. Left me more than just documents and gold. She'd left me a community. Where's the sheriff's office? 2 blocks east. But go to Margot first. She'll want to see you, and she might have something your grandmother left with her. I bought the tape player, thanked Silas, and walked out into mid-morning sun. Whitefish felt different now. Not a strange town where I didn't belong, but a place where people had been protecting me without my knowledge. Where my family had roots I'd never known existed. Margot's place occupied a corner building with big windows and a buzzing neon sign. I could see people inside, the breakfast crowd lingering over coffee. I pushed through the door into warmth and the smell of bacon and fresh bread. 3 customers looked up when I entered. 2 old men at the counter, a young woman in a corner booth. They studied me with the frank curiosity of people who knew everyone in town and recognized a stranger immediately. The woman behind the counter set down her coffee pot and came around to meet me. She was 60-something, gray hair and a ponytail, wearing jeans and flannel. When she looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "Lord, you look just like your mother. Come here, child." She pulled me into a hug before I could respond. I stood stiff for a moment, unused to physical affection, then slowly relaxed into it. She smelled like coffee and vanilla, and something about her embrace felt like safety. "You're Margot." She pulled back, holding me at arm's length to look at my face. "And you're Wren. Dorothy talked about you every single day for 18 years. Showed me the picture she had. You at 3 years old in a yellow dress, crying for your mama." She kept it in her wallet. Looked at it so often, the edges went soft. "You knew my mother?" "Catherine and I grew up together. Best friends from kindergarten through high school. Got in trouble together, covered for each other. Planned our futures on her daddy's porch, drinking sweet tea. She moved away after she married your father, but we kept in touch. Called every Sunday." Margot guided me to a booth, slid in across from me. One of the old men at the counter called out asking for a refill. Margot held up a finger, 1 minute, without taking her eyes off me. "Your grandmother came here every Tuesday morning for 18 years, ordered the same breakfast, sat in this exact booth, and talked about you. About how she was still searching, still writing letters, still hoping. Most folks thought she was lonely, a little obsessed. I knew better. The letters. I found them, in a storage unit, along with everything else she'd been collecting. Evidence about Harold Everton, about the gold, about my parents." I met her eyes. "It wasn't an accident, was it?" "No, baby, it wasn't." Margot reached across the table, took my hand. "Catherine called me 2 weeks before she died. Said she and David had found something big, something connecting her grandfather to corruption reaching Washington. She was scared. Said people were following them, watching the house. She asked me to tell her mother to be careful, to watch over you if anything happened." And 2 weeks later? 2 weeks later, they drove off a cliff on a clear night with dry roads. State police said ice. Ruled it an accident within 48 hours. Sheriff Reynolds tried to push for investigation, got orders from above to drop it. Case closed. The coffee pot on the burner hissed. Neither of us moved. Outside, a truck drove past. Normal life continuing while I learned my entire existence had been built on lies. My grandmother hid me. That's why she never came. Margot nodded slowly. "After your parents died, Dorothy was terrified. She knew whoever killed them might come looking for loose ends. For you. So she made the hardest choice of her life. There's more, isn't there? Something else she left." Margot stood, walked to the counter, bent down. When she straightened, she held a wooden box about 8 inches square, dark wood with a brass latch. "She gave me this 6 months before she died. Made me promise to give it to you if you ever came. Said you'd need it to understand." I took the box. My hands shook. The latch opened easily. Inside, nestled in velvet, sat more letters. But these were different. Not returned envelopes, but letters my grandmother had kept. Letters from my mother. And beneath them, a smaller envelope with my name in careful script. "Open it later," Margot said softly. "When you're ready. When you can handle what's inside." I closed the box, held it against my chest. "Thank you for keeping it safe." That's what we do here. We keep each other safe.
Margot's expression hardened.
Which is why you need to tell me about Marcus Blackwell showing up at your house last night.
How did you know about that?
Honey, Silas Fletcher called me 5 minutes after you left his store. In Whitefish, news travels faster than light. And Marcus Blackwell coming after Dorothy's granddaughter the day after she finds 7 gold bars? That's the kind of news that makes people nervous. He gave me 48 hours to sell him the tractor. Said if I don't cooperate, things get complicated. What he means is he'll kill you like he killed your parents. Margot picked up her phone. I'm calling Tom Reynolds. We're not waiting for Blackwell to make his move. Sheriff Tom Reynolds arrived 15 minutes later, a solid man in his early 60s with a weathered face and steady eyes. He slid into the booth next to Margot, across from me, and listened without interrupting as I explained everything. The inheritance, the gold, the storage unit, the tape recording, Blackwell's threat. When I finished, he sat back and let out a long breath. I knew it. 20 years I've known that accident was murder. But knowing and proving are different things. And when you're a county sheriff and state police tell you to back off, you back off or lose your job. But now we have evidence. Now we have evidence. And more importantly, we have you. Someone with legal standing to pursue it. Dorothy couldn't. She wasn't directly involved, wasn't next of kin to anything that mattered. You are. You inherited your parents' property, their rights, their case. So what do I do? First, you don't go back to that farmhouse alone. Reynolds pulled out his phone. I'm putting a deputy on the property starting tonight. Second, we inventory everything in that storage unit and make copies. Multiple copies, stored in multiple locations. Third, I make some careful calls. See if I can find an FBI agent who isn't on Blackwell's payroll. Will they listen? They will if I approach it right. This is bigger than Whitefish, always has been. Harold Everton didn't steal that gold alone. He had help from inside the government, people who made the whole thing disappear. Some of those families are still powerful, including the Blackwells. Especially the Blackwells. Tom stood. Tomorrow morning we go through that storage unit together. Tonight you stay somewhere public, not the farmhouse, not until we know what we're dealing with. I can stay at the inn on Main Street? Good. I'll have Deputy Torres park outside, keep an eye on things. Reynolds met my eyes. Your grandmother protected you for 18 years. Let us help you finish what she started. The rest of Thursday passed in a blur of activity. I checked into the Whitefish Inn, a small place above an antique shop. Reynolds posted Deputy Torres outside, a young woman who nodded at me once and settled into her patrol car. Margot brought me dinner from the diner, pot roast and mashed potatoes that tasted like comfort. That night, alone in the small room, I finally opened the envelope my grandmother had left in the wooden box. The letter was dated 3 weeks before she died. Dearest Wren, it began. If you're reading this, I've failed you. Failed to bring you home. Failed to give you the childhood you deserved. But I hope I've succeeded in one thing. Keeping you alive long enough to finish what your parents started. Your mother and father were brave people, the kind who see injustice and can't look away. When Catherine discovered what her grandfather had done, the gold he stole, the people he harmed, the corruption he enabled, she couldn't let it stand. She and David spent 2 years gathering evidence. They were so careful, so thorough, but they underestimated how far powerful people will go to protect their secrets. On December 9th, they recorded that tape you found by now. The next day, they drove to Helena to deliver everything to the FBI. But someone got to them first, ran them off the road on December 14th, made it look like an accident. I had you for 3 days after they died. 3 days of rocking you to sleep, of wiping your tears, of promising I'd take care of you. Then social services came. They said I was too old, that you deserved a younger family. I knew the truth. If I fought for you, if I made noise, whoever killed your parents would realize you existed, would see you as a loose end. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I let them take you. But I made them change your name in the system, seal your records, hide you where no one would connect you to Catherine and David. I thought I was buying you time. 18 years to grow up safe while I built a case strong enough to destroy the Blackwells and everyone who helped them. I never stopped looking for you, sweetheart. Never stopped writing letters, even when everyone came back unopened. I wrote monthly, sometimes more. Over the years, I sent 247 letters to every address the system gave me. Every single one returned. But I kept them all, because they were proof that you mattered, that someone loved you even when you didn't know it. The gold in the tractor is proof the theft happened. The documents in the storage unit prove who was involved and how they covered it up. Together, it's enough to bring down everyone responsible. But it will make you a target. The same people who killed your parents will come for you. So you need to be smart, careful, and fast. Get the evidence to people who can't ignore it. Make it public. Make sure the whole world knows before they can silence you. I'm sorry I couldn't be the grandmother you deserved. Sorry I couldn't bring you home, couldn't watch you grow up, couldn't tell you in person how much I loved you. But know this, every day I lived, I thought of you. Every decision I made for you. You were wanted. You were loved. And you were worth every sacrifice. Finish this, Ren. Make them pay. And then build the life your parents wanted for you. One where truth matters, where justice exists, where families don't have to hide to stay alive. With all my love, Grandma Dorothy. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it carefully, placed it back in the box with my mother's letters, and lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. 247 letters, 18 years. Never gave up. The words became a mantra, a promise, a vow. Sleep came, eventually, restless and full of dreams. Friday morning arrived with Deputy Torres knocking on my door at 7. Sheriff Reynolds wants you at the station, says it's important. I dressed quickly, grabbed the wooden box, and followed her downstairs. The patrol car ride took 3 minutes. Reynolds was waiting inside with Margot and Silas. We've got a problem. Reynolds gestured me to a chair. Marcus Blackwell filed a lawsuit yesterday afternoon, claiming the tractor and everything in it legally belonged to him. Says your grandmother purchased stolen property. He's got a judge willing to hear it Monday morning. Can he do that? He just did. And the judge is Harold Benton. Sat on the bench 30 years, known for being friendly to business interests. Blackwell's donated to his campaigns since '98. Reynolds rubbed his face. If he wins, he gets the gold, and we lose our primary evidence. We need to move faster than Monday. I looked around the room. Get everything to someone who can act now. I've been making calls. Reynolds leaned forward. There's an FBI agent in Helena who might help. Rebecca Dawson. She's been investigating political corruption in Montana for months. My contact says she's clean, ambitious, and looking for a big case. This qualifies. How fast can she get here? If I call her this morning, she could be here by tonight. Then call her. I stood. And we need to get everything from the storage unit, all of it, before Blackwell realizes we're making copies. The next hours blurred into organized chaos. Reynolds, Margot, Silas, and I descended on storage unit 17. We photographed every document, organized files into categories, created 6 complete sets of evidence. One for Reynolds, one for the county attorney, one for Margot's safe, one for Silas, one for Richard Caldwell, the lawyer, and one for the FBI. While we worked, Deputy Torres kept watch outside. Around 2 p.m., her radio crackled. Reynolds answered, listened, his expression darkening. "We've got company. Torres says 3 black SUVs just pulled up to the storage facility entrance." "Blackwell's people?" "Has to be." Reynolds moved to the door. "Everyone stay inside. Torres, keep them at the gate." Through the gap in the door, I watched 3 SUVs idle at the entrance. Men in suits stood outside them, talking on phones, waiting. After 10 minutes, they drove away. "They know we're here." Silas stated the obvious. "Just wanted us to know they're watching. Then we work faster." Margot pulled out another folder. "And we don't leave until we're done." By 5 p.m., we'd copied everything. 6 identical sets of documentation, ready for distribution. Reynolds loaded 2 sets into his truck. Margot took hers. Silas took his. I kept one. The 6th would go to FBI agent Dawson when she arrived. But we were missing something critical. I could feel it. The tape mentioned they were going to Helena the next day. That would be December 10th. But they didn't die until December 14th. What happened in those 4 days? Reynolds frowned. "Good question. Did they go to Helena? Did they change their minds? We don't know. Maybe the FBI already has their evidence. Maybe someone inside took it and buried it." Tom pulled out his phone. "Let me call my contact again, see if there's any record." While he talked, I looked through my grandmother's notes. She'd been meticulous, documenting everything. But nothing explained the gap between the tape and the accident. Reynolds came back, expression grim. My contact checked. No record of Catherine and David Ashford making contact in December 2007. But there is a note in the system from December 15th, the day after they died, from an agent requesting that any contact from those names be reported immediately to a specific supervisor. Someone was waiting for them. Margot's voice was flat. Someone inside the FBI, or someone had warned them to watch for my parents. Reynolds shook his head. "Which means we can't just call the FBI and trust they'll handle it. We need leverage. We need something so big, so public, that it can't be buried." "Testimony from someone who is there," Silas added. "Someone who knows the details firsthand." There was one person, Malcolm Ashford Jr. in Missoula, grandson of the colonel who helped Everton steal the gold. My grandmother's notes mentioned trying to talk to him years ago. He'd refused. But circumstances have changed. I stood. If we can show him that Blackwell is planning to blame everything on his grandfather, he might turn. Grief and family reputation. Those are powerful motivators. "You're talking about driving to Missoula." Reynolds crossed his arms. "Blackwell's watching. You go alone, you might not come back." "Then I won't go alone." A voice from the doorway made us all turn. A young man stood there, maybe mid-20s, with Silas's build and dark hair. He looked at me with quiet eyes. "Callum Fletcher. My dad says you need someone to watch your back. I'm volunteering." Silas nodded at his son. "Callum knows Missoula, worked construction there for 3 years, and he's been keeping an eye on your grandmother's property like she asked." I studied Callum. He didn't have the desperate eagerness of someone seeking glory or the cold calculation of someone with an agenda. Just steady competence. "Why would you help me?" "Because your grandmother asked me to. Because your parents deserve justice. And because in a town this small, we take care of our own. Simple as that. Something about the plainness of his answer made me trust him. Tomorrow morning. Can you be ready at 6? I'll be at your grandmother's house at 6. We'll take my truck. Reynolds nodded approval. I'll have Torres follow you out of town. Make sure nobody's tailing. Once you're clear, you're on your own until you get back. After the meeting broke up, I returned to the inn. Deputy Torres resumed her post outside. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Around 11 p.m. my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is Rebecca Dawson, FBI. Sheriff Reynolds gave me your number. I'm in Whitefish. Can we meet? I texted back. Where? Her response. Diner. Now. I'm already here. I threw on clothes, headed downstairs. Torres saw me and stood. Just meeting someone at the diner. The FBI agent. Torres nodded. I'll watch from here. You need anything, call. Margot's place was closed, but lights were on inside. I knocked. The door opened to reveal Margot and a woman in her early 40s. Dark suit, badge on her belt, sharp eyes that assessed me in 2 seconds. Rebecca Dawson. The woman extended her hand. I hear you have evidence of a 100-year conspiracy involving gold theft, murder, and corruption reaching Washington. We shook. Her grip was firm. I have evidence of everything. I gestured to a booth. Want to see it? We spent 2 hours going through documents while Margot made coffee and kept watch. Dawson asked sharp questions, took notes, photographed key pages. When I played the cassette tape, she listened with an expression that grew colder with each word. When it ended, she sat back. Your parents contacted the FBI. I checked before driving here. December 10th, 2007. They called the Helena field office and asked to speak to someone about government corruption. They were told to come in the next day. They never showed. Because they were killed 4 days later. Because someone inside the FBI warned Blackwell they'd made contact. Dawson's jaw tightened. I've been investigating corruption in this state for 8 months, following money, watching patterns. I kept hitting walls. Now I know why. The rot goes deeper than I thought. Can you help us? That's why I drove 3 hours tonight. This is the biggest case I'll ever work. Federal gold theft, murder conspiracy, corruption spanning a century. But I need you to understand something. These people will fight with everything they have. They'll try to destroy you, discredit you, maybe kill you. They already tried killing my parents, and they threatened me. Dawson leaned forward. I can protect you. Federal custody, safe house, guards. But you need to trust me completely. Trust the system. The system failed my parents. Someone inside the FBI tipped Blackwell off 18 years ago. Different time, different people. I've been doing this long enough to know who's clean. My supervisor is clean. My team is clean. We'll keep you safe. How can you be sure? Because I've staked my career on being sure. 2 years ago, my partner was killed in a car accident. I know it wasn't an accident. She was getting close to something. They eliminated her. Dawson met my eyes. I want them, all of them. But I need you alive to testify. The sincerity in her voice felt real. I looked at Margot, who nodded. Okay, but I have conditions. You protect Margot Hayes, Silas Fletcher, and his son Callum, Sheriff Reynolds. They helped me. Blackwell knows it. Already planned on it. Anyone else? Malcolm Ashford Jr. We're going to see him tomorrow. If he gives us his grandfather's journals, he becomes a target, considered protected. Dawson pulled out her phone, started making calls. I left her working and walked back to the inn with Margot. You're doing the right thing, Margot said. Dorothy would be proud. I hope so. Because I just bet everything on an FBI agent I met 2 hours ago. Sometimes that's all you can do. Saturday morning, Callum's truck pulled up to the inn at exactly 6 a.m. Deputy Torres checked his ID, waved him through. I climbed in with the wooden box and a folder of documents. He handed me a thermos of coffee. 3-hour drive. We'll be there by 9. We drove in silence for the first hour. I watched Montana roll past, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. My parents dying because they wouldn't stay silent. My grandmother spending 18 years building a case alone. Now it fell to me to finish it. Your father did good work on my grandmother's house, I said, breaking the silence. He did. Callum kept his eyes on the road. Rebuilt the porch, fixed the roof, replaced all the windows. She paid him well, but that wasn't why he did it. He liked her. Said she reminded him of his own mother. Stubborn, principled, wouldn't back down from what she believed was right.
Did he know what she was investigating? Some. Enough to know she was gathering evidence against powerful people. Enough to worry about her safety. He told her once she should let it go, that some fights aren't worth dying for. What did she say? She told him some fights are the only things worth dying for. The words settled in my chest, heavy and true. We drove on, the sun climbing higher, burning off morning frost. Malcolm Ashford lived in a ranch house on the outskirts of Missoula. White paint fresh, lawn trimmed, American flag on the porch. Callum parked at the curb. I don't know what I'm going to say to him. Tell him the truth? That his grandfather's about to be blamed for everything while the real criminals walk free? Callum looked at me. Men that age care about legacy. Give him a choice between his grandfather being called the mastermind or being called a participant who confessed. The door opened before we reached the porch. Malcolm Ashford stood there, 80-something but still solid, still sharp-eyed. You're Catherine's daughter. Got her eyes. Come to tell me my grandfather was a thief, I suppose. I came to show you proof that Marcus Blackwell is planning to make your grandfather the scapegoat for everything, while his family profits from the same stolen gold. Malcolm's jaw tightened. Inside, both of you. The living room held military memorabilia and family photographs. Malcolm gestured us to a couch, remained standing. Your grandmother came to see me 8 years ago. Told me her daughter had been murdered investigating Harold Everton's crimes. Said my grandfather helped Everton steal government gold. I threw her out. Called her a liar. I pulled documents from my folder, spread them on his coffee table. These are letters between your grandfather and Harold Everton. These are bank records showing payments in March 1919. And this is a letter from Marcus Blackwell's law firm outlining their strategy. Blame Colonel Ashford as the mastermind. Portray Everton as manipulated. Malcolm read in silence. His hands shook slightly. When he finished, he sat down hard. They're going to destroy him. Everything he did in the war, everything he built, gone. People will remember him as the man who stole Reconstruction gold. Unless you help us tell the whole truth. That yes, your grandfather participated, but so did Everton and others. That he felt guilty, that he tried to make amends. Malcolm looked at me. How do you know he felt guilty? Because guilty men write confessions. I met his eyes. Did your grandfather keep journals? He stood, walked to a bookshelf, pulled down a box, set it on the table. 3 leather journals, old and cracked. He gave these to my father before he died in '65. Told him if the truth ever came out, these would matter. My father kept them hidden. Gave them to me before he passed. I've read them. All of them. And my grandfather was eaten alive by guilt. Took the money because he needed it, came home from the war broke. Everton offered $50,000 to help redirect a shipment. Told him the government wasted money anyway. Malcolm's voice grew bitter. Within 6 months, my grandfather knew he'd been played. But by then it was too late. He'd spent the money. Admitting the truth meant prison. So he stayed quiet. He stayed quiet, and it destroyed him. Died at 62. Left these journals because he wanted someone to know. Malcolm opened one, read aloud. March 15th, 1919. Helped Everton redirect the shipment today. 17 bars. Told myself it was for the greater good. But I know it's theft. God forgive me. That's a direct confession, Callum said quietly. There's more. Malcolm flipped pages. April 2nd. Payment received, $50,000. Every dollar feels heavy. June 3rd. Investigators asking questions. Everton says he'll handle it. I fear what that means. The factory fire. The factory fire. Malcolm closed the journal. My grandfather knew Everton committed arson. Knew a night watchman died. But he said nothing. We need those journals. I leaned forward. With those and our documents, we can prove the whole conspiracy. Show your grandfather was part of it, but not the architect. Why should I help you? You're going to destroy my family name either way. I shook my head. We're going to tell the truth. The truth is, your grandfather made a terrible choice, regretted it his whole life, and left a confession because he wanted justice eventually. That's not villainy. That's conscience. Malcolm's expression cracked. He looked old, suddenly. Your grandmother told me the same thing 8 years ago. I didn't believe her. But you're right. If I don't help you, Blackwell makes my grandfather the monster and walks away clean. At least this way the truth matters. He handed me the journals. Take them. Use them. Make sure people know Colonel Malcolm Ashford wasn't proud of what he did. We'll make sure. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Marcus Blackwell has been consolidating power for 30 years. He owns judges, legislators, law enforcement. You think you can take him down with old letters? We have more than letters. We have gold with government stamps. We have proof my parents were murdered. We have water quality reports showing his family poisoned 23 people. Then move fast. Because if Blackwell knows you have all that, you won't live long enough to use it. We drove back toward Whitefish with Malcolm's journals. My phone rang around noon. Sheriff Reynolds. Where are you? Heading back from Missoula. We have Malcolm Ashford's testimony and his grandfather's journals. Good, but we've got problems. Someone cut the power to your grandmother's house last night. Deputy found the lines deliberately severed. And Rebecca Dawson called. She wants everything in FBI hands today. She's moving up her timeline. Why? Because Blackwell's making his move too. He knows we're gathering evidence. If we wait, he'll destroy what he can and disappear what he can't. We're 90 minutes out. Where should we meet? Your grandmother's farmhouse. Dawson's already there with her team. Says it's the most secure location until we transfer you to Helena. We'll be there. Callum pressed harder on the accelerator. The truck ate up highway miles, mountains blurring past. Around 1 p.m., we turned onto the gravel road leading to the farmhouse. Everything looked normal at first. Then I saw the barn, scorched, roof partially collapsed, walls blackened. What happened? Callum slowed. That wasn't cut power lines. That was arson. We pulled into the driveway. Sheriff Reynolds stood with Agent Dawson,
and 2 other FBI agents. Deputy Torres was there too. They all turned as we approached. When did this happen? I climbed out, staring at the destroyed barn. Around 3 a.m., Reynolds said. Torres was on patrol, saw the flames, called it in. Fire department saved the house, but the barn was too far gone. The tractor? Still there? Dawson gestured toward the wreckage. Too much metal to burn completely, but everything else is destroyed. The tractor didn't matter anymore. We had the gold, the documents, Malcolm's journals. But the message was clear. Blackwell was escalating. This is intimidation. I looked at Dawson. He's showing me he can reach my grandmother's property any time, which is why we're moving you to Helena today. Dawson gestured to the house. Get whatever you need. We leave in 30 minutes. I went inside, Callum following. The house felt different, violated. I grabbed some clothes, the wooden box with the letters, a few photographs from the mantel. Everything important fit in one bag. As I came back downstairs, I heard engines, multiple vehicles approaching fast. Everyone outside froze. 3 black SUVs roared up the driveway, kicking up dust. They stopped in formation, blocking the exit. Doors opened. 6 men stepped out, dressed in dark suits, and from the lead vehicle, Marcus Blackwell. He walked toward us with absolute confidence. The FBI agents moved to intercept, hands near their weapons. Miss Ashford, Blackwell's voice carried across the yard. I believe you have property that belongs to me. I'm here to retrieve it. You're trespassing, Dawson called out. Leave now or be arrested. Blackwell smiled. I have documentation proving legal ownership of that tractor and its contents, filed with the county court yesterday. Judge Benton agreed to an emergency hearing Monday, but given the circumstances, he gestured at the burned barn. I'm exercising my right to secure the property immediately. Your rights ended when you committed arson, Reynolds said, and when you threatened a witness. Turn around and leave. I'm not leaving without what's mine. The tension ratcheted up. Blackwell's men hadn't drawn weapons, but their body language was clear. The FBI agents were outnumbered 3 to 1. Then headlights appeared from the road. More vehicles. My heart sank. More of Blackwell's people. But the first vehicle was Sheriff Reynolds' truck. Behind it, a dozen more. Pickup trucks, SUVs, even Silas's work van. They pulled in, surrounding Blackwell's vehicles. Doors opened. 30 people stepped out. Farmers, shopkeepers, people I'd met in town. Margot, Silas. Others I didn't know. Silas walked forward carrying a shotgun. This is our town, Blackwell.
That girl's grandmother was one of us. You're not welcome here. More guns appeared, hunting rifles mostly. The people of Whitefish forming a perimeter around the FBI agents and me. Blackwell's confidence wavered. He looked at his 6 men, at the 40 people facing them, and recalculated. This isn't over. He took a step back toward his Mercedes. You're right. Dawson moved forward. Marcus Blackwell, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, arson, and attempted intimidation of a federal witness. On what authority? On the authority of warrants signed 1 hour ago by a federal judge. Your house and offices are being searched as we speak. Now turn around and put your hands behind your back. For a long moment, Blackwell didn't move. His men looked at each other, calculating odds. Then one of them set his hands on his head and knelt. The others followed. Blackwell's face went red. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have friends in Washington. This will be buried by Monday. Maybe. Dawson cuffed him herself. But right now,
You're coming with me. They loaded Blackwell and his men into FBI vehicles. The people of Whitefish didn't leave until every SUV was gone. Then Margot came over and hugged me. Your grandmother would be so proud. So would my parents. I looked at the crowd. Thank you. All of you.
That's what neighbors do, Silas said simply.
Dawson approached. We need to go, now, while we have momentum. Helena's 2 hours. I want you in a safe house before Blackwell's lawyers start making calls. I nodded, looked at Callum. Thank you for driving me, for helping. Just keeping a promise to your grandmother. He handed me his phone number written on a scrap of paper. When this is over, call me. We'll make sure the house is ready for you to come home. The drive to Helena felt surreal.
Dawson explained what would happen next. Protective custody while they built the case, grand jury hearings, eventually a trial. It could take months. I'm ready. I've been ready since I found those letters. I know you are. Dawson glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Your grandmother spent 18 years building this case. Your parents died trying to expose it. You're finishing what they started. That takes courage. Or stubbornness. Sometimes they're the same thing. The safe house was a conference room converted to living quarters on the 7th floor of the federal building. No windows. Guards outside the door. Secure phone. It felt like prison, but I understood the necessity. That night, alone, I opened my grandmother's letter and read it again. 247 letters, 18 years. Never gave up. The next days blurred together. Dawson brought updates, more arrests, more evidence seized, the case growing stronger. I reviewed documents, identified people in photographs, practiced my testimony. Told my story over and over until it became smooth, ready for a jury. 3 weeks in, Dawson brought news that made my chest tighten. We found the other 10 gold bars. Blackwell had them in a safe deposit box under a shell company, along with records showing he'd been selling them for years, laundering the money through real estate. So you have everything. We have everything. The gold, the documents, Malcolm's journals, the confessions, the money trail. We have it all. Dawson pulled out a folder. Judge set trial for 6 months out. Gives everyone time to prepare. When will I testify? Probably month 5 or 6. We'll build the case first with documents and expert witnesses. You'll be the final piece, the human story that makes the jury care. The months crawled by. I lived in that windowless room, reading, thinking, remembering. Dawson visited regularly with updates. The case was solid. Blackwell's lawyers were fighting but losing ground. More defendants were pleading out, turning on each other. Finally, the trial began. I watched on a video feed as they selected the jury, made opening statements, presented evidence. The defense fought hard, claimed the gold was fake, the documents forged, Malcolm's journals unreliable. But the evidence held. Forensic experts authenticated everything. Malcolm took the stand and read his grandfather's words, voice breaking. Margot testified about my mother's fear in those final weeks. Reynolds testified about being ordered to drop the investigation. Day 14, I took the stand. The prosecutor led me through my story gently. Growing up in the system, the inheritance, finding the gold, the letters, the truth about my parents. How many letters did your grandmother write you? 247. One for nearly every month over 18 years. And how many did you receive before she died? None. Every single one was returned. Why? Because she was protecting me. Hiding me where the people who killed my parents couldn't find me.
On cross-examination, Blackwell's attorney tried to break me, suggested I was motivated by greed, by revenge, by mental instability, that I'd fabricated evidence to destroy a respected businessman. I didn't waver. For every attack, I had an answer.
For every insinuation, I had proof. I told my story the same way I'd practiced it 50 times. Clearly, calmly, credibly. When I finished, I looked at the jury. Then I looked at Marcus Blackwell. His cold calculation had cracked. He knew. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood and read the verdict. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the charge of theft of government property, guilty. 18 counts total, guilty on every single one. Blackwell showed no emotion as they led him away in handcuffs. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge didn't hesitate. Life in federal prison without possibility of parole on the murder conspiracy charges. Additional sentences on remaining counts to run consecutively. Marcus Blackwell would die behind bars. Dawson came to see me that night at the safe house. "It's over. You did it. You kept your promise. We did it. All of us together." "True, but you were brave enough to finish it." She handed me an envelope. "This came today, from the government comptroller's office." Inside was a check for $2,100,000, payment for recovery of stolen federal property and assistance in a major criminal investigation. "Use it well," Dawson said. "Build the life your family wanted for you." I knew exactly what I would do. 6 months after the trial, I returned to Whitefish. The power was back on. The barn had been rebuilt. Silas and Callum's work. The house looked exactly as I'd left it, except cleaner. Margot had been coming by weekly to maintain it. She was waiting on the porch when I pulled up, ran down and hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. "You're back. You're really back." "I'm back. And I'm staying." I looked at the farmhouse, the new barn, the acres stretching away. This is mine. My grandmother left it to me. I'm not running anymore. Good. Because this town needs you. I used the money to convert the barn into a community center, a place for foster kids aging out of the system, a place where they could learn they weren't alone, weren't forgotten, weren't unwanted. I called it Dorothy's Haven. The opening was attended by everyone: Margot and Silas and Callum, Sheriff Reynolds, Malcolm Ashford, who'd driven from Missoula, Agent Dawson, off duty. Families of the cancer cluster victims finally acknowledged. In the main room, I hung a frame containing 2 letters. The first my grandmother wrote when I was 4. The last, written 3 days before she died. Between them, a caption: 247 letters, 18 years, never gave up. That evening, after everyone left, I walked to the cemetery. My parents' graves and Dorothy's, all together. I knelt between them with white roses, 247 of them, 1 for each letter. I placed half at my parents' graves, half at Dorothy's. Then I read aloud a letter I'd written. "Dear Grandma Dorothy, I'm home. After 19 years lost, I found my way back to the place you prepared for me. The purple bedroom, the barn, the letters that proved someone loved me even when I didn't know it. I understand now why you hid me, why you couldn't bring me home. You gave up 18 years with me to give me a lifetime of safety. That's love in its purest form. I want you to know what I did with your gift. The gold helped catch the men who killed my parents.
The documents brought justice for 23 people who died from poison. The farmhouse became a community center where kids like me learned they're not alone. And the letters, those 247 letters, they're hanging where everyone can see them. Because you taught me the most important lesson. Love doesn't quit. Not after 1 year. Not after 10. Not after 18. I'm married now.
To Callum Fletcher, the son of your friend Silas. He helped me fight for truth. We're going to fill this farmhouse with the family you always dreamed of. And I'm going to tell them about you. About the grandmother who never stopped searching, who loved a granddaughter she couldn't hold. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for the letters. Thank you for loving me when I didn't know anyone could. I'll never forget. All my love, Wren. I pressed my hand to her headstone. 247 times you tried. 247 times you refused to quit. You taught me that love doesn't die. It just waits to be found. Callum stood at a respectful distance, waiting. When I finished, he walked over and took my hand. Ready to go home? I looked at the 3 graves one last time. The roses blazed white in the fading light. Yes, I'm ready. We walked back to the farmhouse together as sunset painted the sky gold. Smoke rose from the chimney. Margot had promised to have dinner waiting. The barn stood red and solid, filled with hope instead of secrets. I'd spent 19 years believing I was unwanted. My grandmother spent 18 years proving me wrong. 247 times she showed up. 247 times she chose love over despair. And now I understood. Home isn't a place you're born into. It's a place you fight for. A place you build with your own hands. A place you fill with people who refuse to give up on you. I was home, and I was never leaving.